Sophie wanted to scream, "Don't!" but that would have been an even more certain death. Crouching among the slimy seeds, she felt herself being lifted up and up and up. Suddenly, there was a crunch as a blood bottler bit a huge hunk off the end. Sophie saw his yellow teeth clamping together a few inches from her head. Then there was utter darkness. She was in his mouth. She caught a whiff of his evil-smelling breath. It stank of bad meat. She waited for the teeth to go crunch once more. She prayed that she would be killed quickly. "Ouch!" roared the blood bottler. "Ouch! Ugh!" And then he spat. All of the great lumps of snozzcumber that were in his mouth, as well as Sophie herself, went shooting out across the cave. If Sophie had struck the stony wall of the cave, she would most certainly have been killed. Instead, she hit the soft folds of the BFG's black cloak hanging against the wall. She dropped to the ground, half stunned. She crawled under the hem of the cloak, and there she crouched. "You little swine bugler!" roared the blood bottler. "You little pig swiller!" He rushed at the BFG and smashed what was left of the snozzcumber over his head. Fragments of the filthy vegetable splashed all over the cave. "You was not loving it?" the BFG asked innocently, rubbing his head. "Loving it!" yelled the blood bottler. "That is the most disgusterous taste that is ever clutching my teeth. You must be buggies to be swallowing sludge like that. Every night you could be galloping off happy as a hamburger and gobbling juicy human beings." "Eating human beings is wrong and evil," the BFG said. "It is guzzly and glumptious," shouted the blood bottler. "And tonight I is galloping off to Chile to swallow a few human chili beans. Is you wishing to know why I is choosing Chile?" "I is not wishing to know anything," the BFG said, very dignified. "I is choosing Chile," the blood bottler said, "because I is fed up with the taste of Eskimos. It is important I has plenty of cold eats in this scuddling hot weather, and the next coldest thing to an Eskimo is a chili bean. Human beans from Chile is very chilly." "Horrible," the BFG said. "You ought to be ashamed." "Other giants is all saying they is wanting to gallop off to England tonight to guzzle school chidlers," the blood bottler said. "I is very fond indeed of English school chidlers. They has a nice inky booky flavor. Perhaps I will change my mind and go to England with them." "You is disgusting," the BFG said. "And you is an insult to the giant peoples," shouted the blood bottler. "You is not fit to be a giant. You is a squinky little squiddler. You is a pibbling little pitsqueak. You is a cream puff nut." With that, the horrible blood-bottling giant strode out of the cave. The BFG ran to the cave entrance and quickly rolled the stone back into place. "Sophie," he whispered. "Sophie, where is you, Sophie?" Sophie emerged from under the hem of the black cloak. "I'm here," she said. The BFG picked her up and held her tenderly in the palm of his hand. "Oh, I is so happy to be finding you all in one lump," he said. "I was in his mouth," Sophie said. "You was what?" cried the BFG. Sophie told him what had happened. "And there I was, telling him to eat the filthsome snozzcumber, and you was all the time inside it," the BFG cried. "Not much fun," Sophie said. "Just look at you, you poor little chidler," cried the BFG. "You was all covered in snozzcumber and giant spit." He set about cleaning her up as best he could. "I is hating those other giants more than ever now," he said. "You know what I should like?" "What?" Sophie said. "I should like to find a way of disappearing them, every single one." "I'd be glad to help you," Sophie said. "Let me see if I can't think up a way of doing it." Chapter 10. Frabscottle and Whiz Poppers. By now, Sophie was beginning to feel not only extremely hungry, but very thirsty as well. Had she been at home, she would have finished her breakfast long ago. "Are you sure there's nothing else to eat around here except those disgusting, smelly snozzcumbers?" she asked. "Not even a fizzwinkle," answered the big friendly giant. "In that case, may I please have a little water?" she said. "Water?" said the BFG, frowning mightily. "What is water?" "We drink it," Sophie said. "What do you drink?" "Frobscottle," announced the BFG. "All giants is drinking frobscottle." "Is it as nasty as your snozzcumbers?" Sophie asked. "Nasty?" cried the BFG. "Never is it nasty. Frobscottle is sweet and jumbly." He got up from his chair and went to a second huge cupboard. He opened it and took out a glass bottle that must have been 6 feet tall. The liquid inside it was pale green, and the bottle was half full. "Here is frobscottle," he cried, holding the bottle up proud and high, as though it contained some rare wine. "Delumptious, fizzy frobscottle," he shouted. He gave it a shake, and the green stuff began to fizz like mad. "But look, it's fizzing the wrong way," Sophie cried. And indeed it was. The bubbles, instead of traveling upwards and bursting on the surface, were shooting downwards and bursting at the bottom. A pale green frothy fizz was forming at the bottom of the bottle. "What on earth is you meaning, the wrong way?" asked the BFG. "In our fizzy drinks," Sophie said, "the bubbles always go up and burst at the top." "Upwards is the wrong way," cried the BFG. "You mustn't ever be having the bubbles going upwards. That's the most flush-bunking rubbish I ever is hearing." "Why do you say that?" Sophie asked. "You is asking me why?" cried the BFG, waving the enormous bottle around as though he were conducting an orchestra. "You is actually meaning to tell me you cannot see why it is a scrawny mistake to have the bubbles flying up instead of down? You said it was flush-bunking. Now you say it's scrawny. Which is it?" Sophie asked politely. "Both!" cried the BFG. "It is a flush-bunking and a scrawny mistake to let the bubbles go upwards. If you can't see why, you must be as quacky as a duckhound. By Ringo, your head must be so full of frog squinkers and buzzwangles. I is frittered if I know how you can think it all." "Why shouldn't the bubbles go upward?" Sophie asked. "I will explain," said the BFG. "But tell me first what name is you calling your frobscottle by?" "One is Coke," Sophie said. "Another is Pepsi. There are lots of them." "And the bubbles is all going up?" "They all go up," Sophie said. "Catastrous!" cried the BFG. "Upgoing bubbles is a catastrophe. "Will you please tell me why?" Sophie said. "If you will listen carefully, I will try to explain," said the BFG. "But your brain is so full of bug whiffles, I doubt you will ever understand." "I'll do my best," Sophie said patiently. "Very well, then. When you is drinking this cokey drink of yours," said the BFG, "it is going straight down into your tummy. Is that right? Or is it left?" "It's right," Sophie said. "And the bubbles is going also into your tummy. Right or left?" "Right again," Sophie said. "And the bubbles is fizzing upwards?" "Of course," Sophie said. "Which means," said the BFG, "that they will all come swish-swiffling up your throat and out of your mouth and make a foulsome, belchy burp." "That is often true," Sophie said. "But what's wrong with a little burp now and again? It's sort of fun." "Burping is filthsome," the BFG said. "Us giants is never doing it." "But with your drink," Sophie said. "What was it you called it?" "Frobscottle," said the BFG. "With frobscottle," Sophie said, "the bubbles in your tummy will be going downwards, and that could have a far nastier result." "Why nasty?" asked the BFG, frowning. "Because," Sophie said, blushing a little, "if they go down instead of up, they'll be coming out somewhere else with an even louder and ruder noise." A whiz popper, cried the BFG, beaming at her. Us giants is making whiz poppers all the time. Whiz popping is a sign of happiness. It is music in our ears. You surely is not telling me that a little whiz popping is forbidden among human beings? It is considered extremely rude, Sophie said. But you is whiz popping, is you not, now and again? Asked the BFG. Everyone is whiz popping, if that's what you call it, Sophie said. Kings and queens are whiz popping, presidents are whiz popping, glamorous film stars are whiz popping, little babies are whiz popping. But where I come from, it is not polite to talk about it. Redunculous, said the BFG. If everyone is making whiz poppers, then why not talk about it? We is now having a swiggle of this delicious frabscottle, and you will see the happy result. The BFG shook the bottle vigorously. The pale green stuff fizzed and bubbled. He removed the cork and took a tremendous gurgling swig. It's glummy, he cried. I love it. For a few moments, the big friendly giant stood quite still, and a look of absolute ecstasy began to spread over his long, wrinkly face. Then, suddenly the heavens opened, and he let fly with a series of the loudest and rudest noises Sophie had ever heard in her life. They reverberated around the walls of the cave like thunder, and the glass jars rattled on their shelves. But most astonishing of all, the force of the explosions actually lifted the enormous giant clear off his feet, like a rocket. Whoopee! He cried when he came down to earth again. Now that is whiz-popping for you. Sophie burst out laughing. She couldn't help it. Have some yourself, cried the BFG, tipping the neck of the enormous bottle towards her. Don't you have a cup? Sophie said. No cups, only bottle. Sophie opened her mouth, and very gently the BFG tipped the bottle forward and poured some of the fabulous frabscottle down her throat. And oh gosh, how delicious it was! It was sweet and refreshing. It tasted of vanilla and cream, with just the faintest trace of raspberries on the edge of the flavor. And the bubbles were wonderful. Sophie could actually feel them bouncing and bursting all around her tummy. It was an amazing sensation. It felt as though hundreds of tiny people were dancing a jig inside her and tickling her with their toes. It was lovely. It's lovely, she cried. Just wait, said the BFG, flapping his ears. Sophie could feel the bubbles traveling lower and lower down her tummy, and then suddenly, inevitably, the explosion came. The trumpets sounded, and she too made the walls of the cavern ring with the sounds of music and thunder. Bravo! shouted the BFG, waving the bottle. You was very good for a beginner. Let's have some more.